I'm Charlie Bright of Gold Derby, and today I'm speaking with Julian Slater and Renee Tondelli, who served as the re-recording mixer and the supervising sound editor, respectively, on Netflix's The Trial of the Chicago Seven. Julian, I want to throw this to you first. What were some of the biggest sound moments for the film, and how did you go about capturing those moments in audio?
Well, I would kind of split the movie into two kinds of challenges, really. One is obviously you've got a movie that's written by Aaron Sorkin and with an ensemble cast that's quite amazing, and you've got a lot of kind of fast-paced dialogue. There's almost, I think we felt that it was almost the dialogue almost served as sound effects in the movie. So. I would say that we took a lot of time trying to make sure that the rhythm and the flow of all the scenes had a certain cadence to them. There's obviously the demonstration scenes, which we felt we wanted to get as much energy into those as possible. Obviously, what was happening back in those days was kind of relevant to what was happening today. Whilst we were making the movie, we had the whole Black Lives Matter demonstrations going on. In fact, they were going on whilst we were doing the mix. So I think really we wanted to make sure that we captured that energy and those feelings that were going through society at the time. And we want to make sure that we did justice to it, and served its purpose as much as we could.
Well, basically, when we kind of looked at the film in characters, like the courtroom itself was almost a character. It needed its own emotional arc. You have 23 minutes of courtroom drama scene, and if you're lucky to work on an Aaron Sorkin film, it can be simple to be complex, and it can be very complex to be simple. So we ended up taking those courtroom scenes and making sure that they were very powerful, because one note that we got from Aaron from the beginning was that he really wanted this movie and sound to it to feel like the heavy hand of the federal government coming down, which is obviously what's happening in parallel while the movie was released. So a lot of the things were very orchestrated, and with Aaron you always have dialogue, so there is this pressure to the film where you keep right up to the dialogue or you pull way back. It's always it's an element of our construction that's really important, like his words. That's the most important thing in these stories that he tells. For instance, like the Bobby Seale scene where they take him in the back and do what needs to be done with that prisoner that Julia's Hoffman suggests. And, in that moment, we really had to create this silence and hyperfoley at the same time so that we understood that what was happening behind scenes is very powerful and strong and violent, and what's happening to our eyes, to the public, is not that. And there is a sort of casualness about it that the federal government had, which is like a simple pen click, and then you'd cut back to him, he'd be shackled and handcuffed. And it was those juxtapositions of things that were what often made it interesting and had us delve deep into a soundtrack, which is not necessarily obvious when you listen to it because you're just feeling it.
Yeah, I think it's easy to it's beguiling because on the surface it's a courtroom drama, and it's easy to forget how much work goes into something like that. But it's there's a lot of detail, and there's a lot of subtleties that go into a soundtrack like this movie, and it's you're not hiding behind anything. It's not like you've got spaceships flying and car crashes or car chases. It's everything that you do has to be there for a purpose, and it has to be the right example of what you're trying to portray.
And Renee, the next question I have is for you. What were some of the sound editing choices that you felt really enhanced the drama of the movie?
Well, sound editing choices. I think everything's a choice. I mean, every second of what you put in and what you put out is a choice, and it's instinct, and it's what that scene needs at that time. For like, let's talk about the protests, because the protests were really powerful. And before we started this film, I had all my crew watch Haskell Wexler's film Medium Cool, which, if you haven't seen that, I think you might like that. It was actually shot during the protests, the riots, the convention. He had his actors go through and he was filming them live, and they were performing while that was happening in the background. So we were all able to hear and understand exactly what it sounded like, what elements came through in this emotional scene, because there were many scenes that you had to construct different emotional levels and experiences from. And one of the things, particularly once we got into the heavy, the eruptions, where, there was a woman that was screaming in the movie that was so visceral to me that I made it a point to make sure that all of the things that we did had a reality-based connection, so that the audience could feel the essence and really connect with the protesters. Because I think it's real easy to just look at a protest riot scene and kind of, if you listen to it all at once, like if you're watching it on TV, it's white noise, which is basically a blend of everything, but no information in it. So every single thing that we did, because the scenes were so tightly cut, Aaron had the whole thing mapped out in his head, and he wanted this to be one of the things about showing a riot scene is you just don't show a big riot scene. You show it, and then you cut into these small vignettes of what was really happening. So we spent a lot of time orchestrating those particular scenes. We made sure the baton hits didn't sound overproduced and big and beefy. We wanted them to really sound like a baseball bat cracking someone's skull. Because the people that they were hitting they were women, they were senior citizens, they just went unchained into the protesters, watching it even from the documentary. And feeling that was so important to me that we spent a lot of microcosm and sort of micro editing on things to make sure that you heard exactly that. Like, the sound goes to your brain faster than anything else. Like your visual cortex, you need to figure out, it does a lot of computing to figure out what you're watching, but sound instantly goes there. It goes there fast and first. So you have these small moments, and you pick what you want to hear in that moment that's going to be the most visceral, the most compelling. So I think every second was a choice. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, I think it does. Uh, Julian, to you, what were the toughest sound aspects to capture for you, and also for you, Renee, for each of you in your work for the film?
I think, obviously, the riot scenes and the demonstrations had a certain rhythm to them. They kind of start here and they end here, and you want to do a slow build and not get to here too quickly. Along with that, you've got the technical challenges of, a large riot scene with Daniel Pemberton's score thrusting through the sequence, which is, it's a great score. It's an amazing score. It's very powerful. But you need to balance that with the energy of the crowd, yet whilst hearing, every detail that's going on from the characters, everything that's being said, and every detail. So it's really the kind of trying to make sure that you're keeping that energy, yet hearing the detail. So it's the hearing the big things and hearing the small things at the same time, really.
I think on that point too, his score during, like if you take the mock trial right? Where he's Kunstler's saying, okay, let's see if you did start the riot. And they cut from the conspiracy house back and forth to Grand Park. That score that he's got there does build, but it was specifically a chaotic score. It was because things were being held, but they were being held in this sort of chaos. And so what we did is we went against that. We didn't go for chaos in necessarily that sense. So we built it in a very more intricate emotional level. So he had that visceral sound that it was about to explode. Julian had the wonderful ability, and he did it so beautifully, as you can see, to take these elements. There were like 3 or 4 elements that were constantly building. The crowd was starting to build. Kunstler and Hayden started to build. The bar where all the diplomats were watching, or the politicians were watching, the convention, everything had a moment of building, all the while listening to the dialogue. Keeping the dialogue was sort of the baseline that we all went on, because it's Aaron Sorkin, and in many ways his big sound effects moment, like the explosion scene or when everything blows up, are basically his words. So Julian took all of that heat and just kept turning it up and turning it up and turning it up. And we used it. We went as far as we could on the pressure to keep the momentum going, to keep the experiences going, to keep the experiences on a level so that one didn't get hotter than the other, because ultimately it was the Kunstler Hayden that was the centerpiece of that scene. And that was the moment that needed to really boil over first. And it was between Julian and Michael Babcock, our sound effects mixer, it was amazing work that they did to keep that boiling and not boil over. It's a tricky moment. It's like hot and cold on your shower. That 1 second you turn this way, it's like this much and it's too hot and this is too cold. And it was it was profound. I thought what they did. They did a great job of that.
Yeah, and I think we both felt that what we were doing, the piece of cinema that we were working on was an important piece of cinema, and it was, there was something that was very an important message. Aaron wanted to get this movie out before the election for a very good reason, and we felt we were entrusted with that, and we wanted very much to make sure that message got across.
Yeah, that was our number one goal. Like everything, that pretty much was that was our big note. All of us, we all collectively felt that. So everything we did was based on that.
So you mentioned, Aaron several times here. What was the process? And this is to you, Renee, first. What was the process of collaborating with Aaron Sorkin like?
Dreamy. No. I mean, he really is like just a lovely man, and really smart, and really funny, and really aware of what he wants. I mean, this is his second film, but he might as well have done 25 already, I mean, that he's directed. He understands, first of all, let's just say that this all started late February, which was, lockdown happened, and we all went home, and nobody really saw each other at all until we got to the mix stage. Everything had to be done from my studio in the back, all the recording of the group and the actors, everything had to just be me doing it, because there was no stage there. We couldn't collectively do anything. But as far as Aaron, we communicated a lot because he's a writer, which is great. So his emails were wonderful, very quick to respond. It's kind of amazing. I don't think I've ever had a director that has responded so quickly to me in anything that I've asked for. So he was very comfortable with that, communicating like that through phone and through email. And a lot of he basically gave us overall notes. and just said, go for it. And then we took his house and went to work on it. And then he came and sat. The first time he actually heard what we did, which by the way was a little frightening for all of us because it was playback of the final and at the end of it all, and we're thinking, gosh, what if he hates it all, because he just couldn't. Getting to the stage was really complex for everybody. We could only have 4 people on the stage at once. We were often the only people on the Warner Brothers lot because we were the first ones in there. So it was luckily he liked it all. I mean, there were a few things he changed, but pretty much it was very small notes.
Yeah, I would say he's not only is he a lovely chap, but he doesn't micromanage. He said something very interesting when he came down for the first time. He said, look, you're the experts in sound. I've done my bit. You go to town and do what you think, and then I'll give you notes. So that gave us a freedom to kind of just head it. We were heading in the direction that we knew he wanted to go, but it gave us the freedom to kind of just go for it and experiment. And we got to mention Alan Baumgarten, his picture editor.
Yeah.
He was very much there with us day in, day out, and he's very forensic in his approach to sound. So we would inch forward little by little. But as for Aaron, he's very much hands off until he wants to see the whole picture. He wants to see the big picture at the back end and then give his notes.
Well, Julian and Renee, thank you so much for joining us. We wish you all the best this award season. And to all our viewers, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to go to goldderby.com to make your predictions and see if you can outsmart the top prognosticators in Hollywood. Thanks so much, Julian and Renee.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.